The Summoning of the Forgotten. In a small isolated village nestled deep within a dense forest, there was an old legend whispered among the elders. It was said that deep in the woods, there existed an ancient ritual known as the Chalava, a forbidden summoning that could call forth entities from the void between life and death. The ritual was said to be so dangerous that it had been banned for centuries, and the knowledge of it had been erased, or so they thought. One stormy night, a group of 5 friends, Riya, Arjun, Priya, Sam, and Vikram, arrived in the village. They were urban explorers, thrill seekers who loved uncovering mysteries and legends. They had heard rumors of the Chalava ritual and were determined to find out if it was real. The villagers warned them to stay away, their faces pale with fear, but the friends dismissed their warnings as superstition. After days of searching, they stumbled upon an abandoned temple hidden deep in the forest. The temple was overgrown with vines, and the air around it felt heavy, as if it were alive. Inside, they found an ancient manuscript detailing the Chalava ritual. The instructions were clear. Light 7 black candles, draw a specific symbol in blood, and chant the incantation written in an unknown language. The manuscript warned that once the ritual began, it could not be stopped. Curiosity got the better of them. They decided to perform the ritual that very night. Raya, the most skeptical of the group, reluctantly agreed to participate. They lit the candles, drew the symbol using a drop of blood from each of them, and began chanting. The moment the last word left their lips, the candles flickered violently, and the temperature in the room dropped. A low, guttural growl echoed through the temple, and the ground beneath them trembled. From the shadows emerged a figure, a grotesque, humanoid creature with hollow eyes and a mouth that stretched too wide. It spoke in a voice that sounded like 1,000 whispers. "You have summoned me. Now you must pay the price." The friends froze in terror as the entity began to move toward them. One by one, it claimed them, feeding on their fear and despair. Arjun was the first to fall. The creature touched him, and he collapsed, his body withering into dust. His screams echoed through the temple, but they were cut short as his form disintegrated into nothingness. The friends stared in horror, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. As Arjun's body vanished, the temple itself seemed to come alive. The walls began to bleed a dark, viscous liquid, and the air grew thick with the stench of decay. The symbol they had drawn on the floor began to glow an eerie red, pulsating like a heartbeat. Priya tried to run, but the doors of the temple slammed shut, trapping her. She pounded on the heavy wooden doors, her screams growing louder as the entity turned its hollow gaze toward her. "Please, no. Let me go," she begged, but the creature only smiled, its jagged teeth glinting in the dim candlelight. The creature lunged at Priya, its elongated fingers wrapping around her throat. She struggled, but her strength faded as the entity drained her life force. Her body went limp, and her eyes turned glassy as her soul was consumed. The friends watched in horror, unable to move or speak. Sam, the most courageous of the group, grabbed a piece of broken wood from the floor and charged at the creature. "Leave us alone," he shouted, swinging the makeshift weapon. The entity laughed, a sound that sent chills down their spines, and with a flick of its hand, Sam was thrown across the room. He hit the wall with a sickening crunch and fell to the ground, unmoving. Vikram, trembling with fear, dropped to his knees. "Please, we didn't mean to disturb you. We'll do anything. Just let us go." The entity tilted its head, as if considering his plea, but then it lunged forward, its claws sinking into Vikram's chest. He screamed as the creature dragged him into the shadows, his cries echoing into silence. Rhea, the last one standing, realized the only way to stop the entity was to reverse the ritual. She frantically searched the manuscript and found a passage about breaking the summoning. She had to extinguish the candles in reverse order while reciting a counter chant. Her hands shook as she reached for the first candle. The creature turned its attention to Rhea, its hollow eyes burning with fury. "You cannot escape," it hissed, its voice reverberating through the temple. Rhea's heart pounded as she recited the counter chant, her voice trembling but determined. The entity roared, its form flickering as the first candle went out. Rhea moved to the second candle, her movements quick but deliberate. The entity lunged at her, but she dodged, her instincts sharpened by adrenaline. She blew out the second candle, and the creature staggered, its form becoming less solid. "You will not win," it growled, but Rhea ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. As Rhea extinguished the third candle, the temple began to shake violently. The walls cracked, and the ceiling groaned under the strain. The entity screamed, its voice a cacophony of agony and rage. Rhea pressed on, knowing that stopping now would mean certain death. The fourth candle went out, and the entity's form began to dissolve. It reached for Rhea, its claws inches from her face, but she ducked and moved to the fifth candle. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to close in around her. Rhea's breath came in ragged gasps as she extinguished the fifth candle. The entity was now a mere shadow, its form barely visible. "You think you can defeat me?" it whispered, its voice faint, but still menacing. Rhea didn't respond, her focus entirely on the remaining candles. The sixth candle went out, and the entity let out a final, ear-piercing scream. Its form disintegrated into a cloud of black smoke, which swirled around Rhea before dissipating into nothingness. The temple fell silent, the only sound being Rhea's labored breathing. Rhea approached the seventh and final candle, her hands trembling. She took a deep breath and blew it out. The moment the flame died, the temple was plunged into darkness. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the air grew still. Rhea collapsed to the ground, exhausted but alive. When Rhea finally gathered the strength to leave the temple, she found herself back in the forest. The temple was nowhere to be seen, as if it had vanished into thin air. She stumbled back to the village, where the elders looked at her with pity. "You should not have meddled with the Chalava," one of them said. Rhea never spoke of what happened that night, but she could still feel the entity's presence lurking in the shadows, waiting for another chance to be summoned. The manuscript was never found again, and the temple was swallowed by the forest. But the legend of the Chalava lives on, a grim reminder that some things are better left forgotten. The end.